Now it's time for DC and the Capstone Report presented by Golden Shores Production. DC, welcome into the Blitz. How you doing this morning?
Doing great, Martin. How are you today?
Doing well. Well, let me give you some stats and then we'll go from there. 25,000 square feet, fuel center and smoothie bar, 5 performance chefs, 4 dietitians, upstairs patio dining overlooking practice fields, and 50-plus HD TV. What am I talking about? That's Amy Bragg's tweet announcing the new sports and nutrition facility. On last Tuesday, we had on Dr. Brett McCabe, and he talked about physical, mental, and, of course, the nutrition side. He mentioned that was a key part of it. And Alabama has the best in the business when it comes to Amy Bragg's, and now they have a facility to match it. David, just DC, when we look at this, just think about how important is the nutrition program to what Nick Saban's been able to do.
Well, I think it's been tremendously important to what Nick Saban's been able to do, but I think it's also been tremendously important to all the athletics across everything that University of Alabama has done since 2010. Now, Martin, you and I know we've heard a little backlash from all these things of people talking about spending money on that. But you and I know there's no secret that athletes have eaten better than other college students for quite some time at the University of Alabama and other universities. I remember me and Gary being at the University of Alabama in '81 and making friends with the football players, realizing that they had much better food at Bryant Hall than we had. That's no secret. But it's more than just that. And this is a great tweet. It's a great talking point for recruiting. But I'm here to tell you that it runs deeper than that. And if you look at Alabama prior to 2010. I think one of the things you see, if you look at some of those teams, great teams that won the national championship football team-wise in 2009. But at that time, I still think we were missing a piece of the puzzle, and I believe that Amy Bragg definitely has fit perfectly like a glove in that piece. I believe in 2009, if you look back at some of the statistics, 2007, 2008, the football team was really doing better and improving. Had strength and conditioning with Scott Cochran, and you had Jeff Allen there being one of the greatest trainers, bringing in some, cutting edge technology and things to help the team. But one cog they were missing was nutritionist, and I think that at that time it was Mal Moore. I believe Dave Hart, who worked under him as an assistant, who worked in conjunction with Jeff Allen, and said, "Hey, what's missing in this? And some of our stamina, some of our some of our strength and conditioning. What's missing in it? And nutrition was the thing." And I'm here to tell you, look, from 2010 to now, we've jumped light years ahead. And here's a statistic for all our listeners out there, Martin. I don't know if everybody remembers or knows this exactly, but in 2010, when Amy Bragg was hired, she was one of only 8 full-time nutritionists on any Division I program in the nation. We're talking about hundreds of programs. But she was on one of 8. She came out of Texas. She had been at Texas A&M for 6 years as a nutritionist when they found her there. And she came in, and they committed. Not only did the athletic director and the trainer, who she works under the sports medicine department, but also all the coaches, they committed that would be a point of emphasis if she came in and made a difference in the teams. She promised she could make a difference if they committed to her. Well, I think that Nick Saban being the one that's really seen the most performance improvement because of it has been a big part of getting what you see now in 2018, that 25,000 square foot facility, not only for recruiting purposes but for on the field competitive advantage from the players themselves. I think nutrition plays a big part in it, and of course Amy Bragg is the best in the business, as you've stated this morning.
Yeah, and without a doubt, if you start going back and looking, she actually several of the top programs have actually hired nutritionists. We talk a lot about how ADs want to hire coaches that coached under Saban and strength coaches that are associated with Cochran and Saban. Well, the same thing has happened in the nutrition world as well. So if you go back and start tracing how many nutritionists out there were part of the Amy Bragg program, she kind of has that same legacy and lure in her circle of influence. And so it definitely makes a huge difference. If you have bad gas, you can have a Porsche or a Corvette or whatever, but if the gas is not good, then it's not going to perform at the highest level. And that's what food and nutrition is, and she does a great job with it. Speaking
I
of,
think another level
she
takes it to, Martin, is her personal hands-on experience with the players. If you talk to some of the players and you listen to what they've said about Amy Bragg, they will give her credit for changing their body type, changing their muscular type, helping them with their weight. And that the reason is she knows her players individually, just not a cookie cutter approach. She does it individually, per player, per need assessments as far as their shakes and smoothies and meals and recovery meals and pregame meals and pre-practice meals. Everything is planned. And you can imagine working for Nick Saban, he likes that process, but Amy Bragg is taking it up a notch. She has it catered to each individual player. And some of the players who transfer in from other programs, for example, Garrett Dieter, when he came from Bowling Green, he was quoted as saying, Bowling Green didn't even have a nutritionist on our team, and I didn't know the difference that one made until I got to the University of Alabama. He said, just being able for her, she's changed my body type, which is transferred into more stamina, more energy, more speed, and so those type of little things are important. I think Ryan Anderson was credited as saying that he gave a lot of credit to Amy Bragg, that she was there the full 4 years that she was there, and that he had a weird body type where he would be 250 pounds one day and 265 pounds another day. And she was able to come in and get that, work it to his advantage to keep the weight at a great level for him to be his best. And I think she only does that with those two, just two small examples. She does it individually with others. So getting to know her team members has been very important in seeing what they can do and how the nutrition makes a difference in each individual. Well,
we can say it. They are spoiled. But I'm okay with that. So, I've been in that track, and I don't hate them for all that they get, because it would have made us even better. But so congratulations to Amy. We just wanted to recognize her and her contribution, because it's one of those things that can easily be overlooked, but it's definitely a difference maker. Talking about difference maker, Alabama this year, offensive line came out of the spring game, DC, and you had to leave with a little bit of concern that, hey, what's going on here? Matt Womack didn't go through the spring, so that left the opportunity for him. Jonah Williams was still in his spot, Ross Piercebaker in a different spot, trying to work Jedrick Wills in, trying to work Leatherwood in. And then, of course, once the spring ends, you end up losing two more guys that were in that conversation, talking about Dallas Womack and, of course, Brandon Kennedy. What's your initial assessment of this offensive line, and where do you see it going as they roll back out in the fall?
Well, yeah, I think offensive line, and that's one of the things on the podcast today that Gary and I are going to concentrate on, is looking at offensive line. Last week we looked at our defensive line. This week offensive line, but I think offensive line coming out of the last year and coming out of the spring has to be a area that you would think we have an advantage in, simply because of experience. We're going to return 4 starters on the offensive line in Piercebaker and Jonah Williams, Matt Womack, and looking at
Lester Cotton.
Yes. Returning those 4, Lester Cotton, returning those 4 starters. You know, in my opinion, that experience is invaluable when it comes to the offensive line. I think what you saw coming out of last year, coming out of the spring, is just a lack of continuity in the offensive line. What's going to happen coming out in these summer workouts and working into the spring? I mean, in summer practices, getting ready for the fall. As you're going to have to see that continuity come full circle and decide who's going to play the best player in the best spot. So I think definitely we've got a situation where its experience is important. And you look at the last 3 years, another person we're going to concentrate highlight today is Coach Brent Key. This is his 3rd offensive line. He's had the offensive line in his tenure as offensive line coach, and the finalists for the Joe Moore Award each year, which was given to the best offensive line in the nation. I think they're working at that level. He has a great leader in that area. I think he has a lot to work with coming out. But the biggest thing will be putting the right people in the right places. Competing, you got 2 or 3 people competing for that other spot on the offensive line, and you're looking at Alex Leatherwood, and Jedrick Wills, and Deontay Brown. Of course, people have heard about Alex Leatherwood and Jedrick Wills. They were come out last year when they would contribute when players went down. Alex Leatherwood came in the final second half of that, or maybe 3/4 of the game, and against Georgia, and did really well. I think overall, Jedrick Wills in his spot play has been able to come in and play. Actually, was pushing, I believe, Matt Womack in the freshman for playing time. I think that both of those are going to come in and add a spark to the offensive line, to add a lot of competition there. But the one person I don't think anybody's talking about is Deontay Brown. I think Deontay Brown has an opportunity to come in and push for playing time, maybe push for a starting role. He might be that 5th person, but finding that person to fit in and who the starter's going to be. We're going to have a rotation. We have pretty deep there with players, which is evident, indicative of the people who are transferring out. When you have Dallas Womack, Brandon Kitty transferring out, the talent there and the depth there is really good. So I look for us to have a good offensive line if we come together continuity-wise and are able to put the best on the field and get a good rotation of coming in and out. Deontay Brown, Martin, is one of those who has benefited from Amy Bragg's nutrition program. Came in as a freshman from Austin there out of Decatur, Austin High School, with a little weight, large weight of mass on his body, but more fat than muscle. And he's benefited from a redshirt year. He was really making a difference as a freshman. Redshirt has benefited greatly from the nutrition program, has his weight under control, and has transferred that into energy and power. And I look for him to really, listeners may not be familiar with him, but I believe by the end of the year they will be. I look for him to make a big difference in the offensive line this year.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I think Brandon Kennedy may have left a little early because we saw that Nick Saban doesn't make his decision in the spring and not allow you to fight in the fall. We saw Bradley Bozeman push Pierce Baker back to guard. I think Brandon Kennedy could have done likewise, but he jumped ship, and now he's going to go up and fight for Tennessee. Also, I think it's going to be interesting to watch the Womack versus Jedrick Wills battle. And, last year, man, how big a difference would that redshirt year have made if Jedrick Wills could have played in 4 games and you knew what you had without losing that red shirt. So it's going to be an interesting battle. And there's a couple of freshmen coming in this year that, hey, because they can play as freshmen and still be redshirted, they may even work their way into a little playing time. DC, the Capstone Report, presented by Golden Shores Production. DC, tell our listeners what else you got going on that's going to be happening with the Capstone Report today.
Well, we're going to spotlight those 3 players in the offensive line and talk about it, but we're also going to talk about Amy Bragg's nutrition program, kind of going a little deeper into that. And we're going to look at Coach Brent Key and what he means to the offensive line. One thing you'll hear us say on the podcast today that some folks may think, well, this is just crazy. How could that happen? But one thing that you hadn't talked about, I hadn't talked about yet, is the possibility. I think Coach Saban puts the best players on the field in the offensive line. The possibility of bringing an All-American tackle in Jonah Williams to compete at the center position. I look at that and people say that's not going to happen. But when you got as great of players as Alex Leatherwood and Jedrick Wills on the outside, and you've got they're competing for playing time with Matt Womack, you got an All-American tackle and Jonah Williams that could pretty much play anywhere on the line. I wouldn't be surprised that sometime during this summer that we experiment with him being at center. And I believe, like you said before, Bradley Bozeman pushed Pierce Baker back to guard. I think Brandon Kennedy could have competed and done the same thing, just like you said. But I think another reason for Brandon Kennedy's transfer out is I think it's always been in the works or been in the talk that Jonah Williams could possibly play center. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but we're going to talk a little bit about it on the podcast today.
Doesn't sound crazy at all. Sounds like another rendition of Barrett Jones, and those 2 players are very similar, in my opinion, talking about Jonah Williams, Barrett Jones. It's going to be interesting to see how this offensive line works out. Also, it's going to be interesting, and I'm sure you're going to hit it. Joe Pendry has stepped away, and he's kind of been that off the field ear that has been that consistency for the Alabama offensive line. So Brent Key stepping it up, and I think these new coaches have challenged him and he's recruiting like crazy compared to what I think he did in times past. But we can catch that more on the DC Capstone Report. DC, tell them real quick how they can follow you.
Well, you can catch us at GoldenShoresProductions.com. That's GoldenShoresProductions.com. And you can follow me on Twitter at DavidCont50. That's DavidCont50.
All right.
Look forward to your listening in today.
All right. Thanks, DC, and we'll catch up with you on next Monday.
Thanks. Have a great day, Martin.